July 1st, 2004. UCLA Medical Center, Los Angeles. Marlon Brando is dying, 80 years old. Pulmonary fibrosis, pneumonia, congestive heart failure. His body is failing. His children gather around the bed. His nurse, Angela Borlaza, who's been with him for years, holds his hand. He's drifting in and out of consciousness, morphine dulling the pain. But in the lucid moments, he talks about his career, his regrets, his loves. And then, out of nowhere, he says a name he hasn't spoken publicly in 49 years. Jimmy. His daughter Cheyenne, or maybe it was Christian, accounts differ, asks, "Who's Jimmy, Dad?" Marlon's eyes are closed, but tears leak out. "Jimmy Dean. I loved him. I never told him. He died before I could." The room goes quiet. Everyone knows who James Dean is, the rebel, the icon, dead at 24 in 1955. But no one knew this, that Marlon Brando, one of the greatest actors who ever lived, famously bisexual but intensely private, carried a secret about James Dean for 49 years. "I loved him." 3 words, said once on his deathbed, never elaborated, never explained. Marlon Brando died the next day, July 2nd, 2004, taking whatever the truth was to his grave. But those 3 words, they opened a door Hollywood had kept locked for 50 years, a door that reveals one of the most complicated, most forbidden, most mysterious relationships in cinema history. This is the story of James Dean and Marlon Brando. Mentor and student. Friends, maybe lovers? Probably more than one, possibly all 3. Hollywood whispered about it in the 1950s but never printed it. Biographers hinted at it but never confirmed it. And the 2 men at the center? They never spoke about it publicly. Not once. Until Marlon's deathbed, when he finally said the truth, or part of it, or maybe just enough to make us wonder forever. This is their story. Spring 1954, New York City, the Actors Studio on West 44th Street. This is the temple of method acting. Marlon Brando trained here. Montgomery Clift, Marilyn Monroe. Now a new generation is arriving, hungry, intense, desperate to learn the technique that makes Marlon Brando the greatest actor alive. Among them, James Dean, 23 years old, from Fairmount, Indiana. He's done some television, some theater, nothing major. But everyone who sees him act notices something. A raw intensity, an inability to fake emotion. He doesn't perform, he bleeds on stage. Lee Strasberg, who runs the Actors Studio, sees James audition, accepts him immediately. "You have it," Strasberg says, "whatever it is. Now you need to learn how to control it." But James doesn't want to learn from Strasberg. He wants to learn from the master, from the actor who changed everything, from Marlon Brando. There's a problem. Marlon doesn't teach, doesn't mentor, doesn't take students. He's only 30 years old, but already a legend. A streetcar named Desire, the wild one. On the waterfront filming right now, he's the biggest star in the world, and he's notoriously difficult, temperamental, dismissive of fame, of Hollywood, of people who want things from him. But James Dean doesn't care about impossible. He shows up at Marlon's apartment in the West Village, unannounced, uninvited, just knocks on the door. Marlon opens it, sees this skinny kid in jeans and a white t-shirt. Glasses, messy hair, nervous but trying to hide it. "Who are you?" Marlon asks. "James Dean. I'm at the actor's studio. I need you to teach me." "I don't teach." "You don't have to teach. Just let me watch you. I'll be invisible." Marlon should say no. Should close the door. He's done this before. Ambitious young actors showing up, wanting proximity to greatness. He hates it. Hates the desperation, the need. But there's something about this kid. Something familiar. Marlon sees himself. The same hunger, the same wound, the same inability to fit into normal society. Marlon recognizes a fellow outsider. "You got a motorcycle?" Marlon asks. "No." "Then get one. Come back when you do." 3 days later, James returns with a motorcycle. Borrowed. Barely knows how to ride it. But he learned. Because Marlon said to. That's how it starts. Not with acting lessons. With motorcycles. With rides through New York at 3 a.m. With long conversations at diners. About acting. About loneliness. About feeling like aliens in a world that doesn't understand people like them. And slowly, Marlon lets James in. Not as a student, as something else. A friend, a protege, a mirror. But everyone who sees them together notices something. The way James looks at Marlon, not with admiration, with something deeper. Devotion, need, love. And the way Marlon looks at James, protective, possessive, territorial. Like James Dean is his by summer 1954. James is spending more time at Marlon's apartment than his own. They rehearse scenes together. Marlon teaches him the method. How to access real emotion. How to use personal pain to fuel performance. How to stop performing and start being. But it's more than acting lessons. They talk about everything. About their fathers, both absent, both cold. About feeling different, wrong, broken. About sexuality that doesn't fit into neat categories. About the masks they wear in public and the truth they hide. Marlon Brando is bisexual. This isn't speculation. He said it himself in later interviews. He had affairs with men and women, some famous, some not. Hollywood knew. But in 1954, you didn't talk about it. Bisexuality, queerness of any kind, could destroy a career. So Marlon dated actresses publicly and kept his male lovers private. James Dean's sexuality is more complicated, more hidden. He dated women. Pier Angeli, Ursula Andress, Dizzy Sheridan. But there were always rumors about James and Rogers Brackett, the older director who mentored him in Los Angeles, about James and other young actors, about late-night parties in Greenwich Village where the rules were different. James never confirmed or denied anything, just lived in the ambiguity, refusing to be defined, refusing to be boxed in. And now here he is, spending every day with Marlon Brando, the most magnetic man in America, learning from him, worshiping him, maybe loving him. But what is Marlon feeling? Friends from that time, actors, directors, people at the actor's studio, later described the dynamic. Marlon was teaching James, but it felt like more. The intensity was unusual. James couldn't take his eyes off Marlon. And Marlon, he liked being looked at that way. One actor, whose name was never published, told a biographer decades later, "We all knew something was happening. We didn't have language for it then. Didn't talk about it. But the connection between them was electric, romantic. Whether it was physical, I don't know. But it was definitely love. On James's side, certainly. On Marlon's, maybe. He was hard to read. By fall 1954, Hollywood gossip columnists start noticing. Hedda Hopper writes, "Young actor James Dean seems to be spending an awful lot of time with Marlon Brando. Wonder what they're studying." The subtext is clear, the insinuation obvious. But in 1954, you couldn't print accusations of homosexuality. So they hint, they imply. They let readers draw conclusions. Marlon gets angry, not at the gossip, at James. "You're too obvious," Marlon tells him. "The way you look at me, the way you follow me, people are talking." James doesn't understand. So what? Let them talk. You don't get it. You're about to have a career. East of Eden is going to make you a star. And if people think if they suspect, it's over. Hollywood doesn't forgive that. "I don't care about Hollywood." "Then you're a fool." They fight about privacy, about survival, about the difference between being true to yourself and being smart about what you reveal. Marlon knows how to play the game, has been doing it for years. Date actresses, be seen with women, keep the rest private, hidden. But James doesn't want to hide, doesn't want to perform off-screen. He spent his whole life wearing masks, pretending to fit in. With Marlon, he thought he could finally be real, honest, himself, but Marlon is pulling away, creating distance, because the rumors are getting louder. And Marlon's career is too important, his privacy too valuable. He can't be publicly linked to James Dean in that way. December 1954. They see each other less. Marlon is filming Guys and Dolls. James is preparing for Rebel Without a Cause. They're both busy. That's the excuse. But really, Marlon is pulling back, protecting himself, protecting his image. James is devastated, not just because he's losing a mentor, because he's losing someone he loves. Maybe the only person besides Pier Angeli who made him feel understood, seen, accepted. One night, drunk, James shows up at Marlon's apartment, pounds on the door. "Let me in." Marlon opens the door. "You need to go home, Jimmy." "I love you." Silence. Marlon's face is unreadable. Then, "You don't love me. You love what I represent. Freedom, rebellion, the person you want to be." "But I'm not that person. I'm just an actor protecting his career." "That's not true. I love you as a person, as..." Don't say it. Because once you say it, it becomes real. And real is dangerous. "I don't care about danger." "Then you're going to get hurt. And I can't protect you from that." James leaves, crying, angry, heartbroken. And that's the last real conversation they have. Because 2 months later, in February 1955, James goes to Los Angeles to start filming Rebel Without a Cause. And Marlon stays in New York. And they drift apart. They talk occasionally. Phone calls, brief, surface level. "How's the film?" "Good." "You okay?" "Yeah." But the intimacy is gone, the connection severed, because Marlon chose safety over honesty, career over love. And James can't forgive that. September 30th, 1955. James Dean dies, Route 466. Car crash, dead at 24. Marlon hears the news. He's in Los Angeles, filming the tea house of the August moon. Someone from the studio tells him, James Dean was in an accident. He didn't make it. Marlon's reaction, according to people who were there, is strange. He goes very quiet, walks off the set, disappears for the rest of the day. When he comes back the next morning, his eyes are red. But he doesn't mention James, doesn't talk about it, just goes back to work. The funeral is October 8th, 1955. Fairmount, Indiana. Hundreds attend. Hollywood stars, fans, family, friends. Marlon Brando doesn't go. Doesn't send flowers. Doesn't make a statement. Nothing. Publicly, it's as if James Dean didn't matter to him. As if they were barely friends. But privately, according to Carlo Fiore, Marlon's close friend and biographer, Marlon is wrecked. He couldn't talk about it. Wouldn't talk about it. Just shut down. I asked him once, years later, why he didn't go to the funeral. He said, because I couldn't. If I went, people would see. They'd know. And I couldn't let them know. Know what? Carlo never asked. Marlon never explained. For 49 years, Marlon Brando doesn't publicly discuss James Dean. Not in interviews, not in his autobiography, nothing. Other actors from that era, Montgomery Clift, Paul Newman, Dennis Hopper, talk about James, about his talent, his intensity, his influence. But Marlon, silence. Until July 1st, 2004. His deathbed, when he finally says it. I loved him. But what did that mean? Loved him as a friend? As a student? As something more? We'll never know for certain. Because both men are dead, and the truth died with them. But here's what we do know. In the 1970s, Marlon Brando gave interviews where he openly discussed his bisexuality. Talked about affairs with men, James Baldwin, other actors whose names he didn't mention. He was remarkably honest for the time, unapologetic. But he never mentioned James Dean. Why? If James was just a friend, why not talk about him? Why the silence? One theory, because it was complicated. Because maybe they were lovers, or wanted to be, or almost were. And Marlon, famous for his honesty about sexuality, couldn't talk about James without revealing something he wasn't ready to reveal. Another theory, because James mattered too much. Because some relationships are too important, too painful, too sacred to make public. Because Marlon loved James, in whatever way that means. And keeping that love private was the only way to honor it. A third theory, because of guilt. Because Marlon rejected James, pushed him away, chose career over connection. And James died 2 years later. And Marlon spent the rest of his life wondering, what if I'd been braver? What if I'd let him love me? What if I'd loved him back? In 1976, 21 years after James's death, Marlon did an interview with a French magazine. The interviewer asked about method acting, about the actor's studio, about young actors Marlon had influenced. What about James Dean? The interviewer asked. He studied with you, didn't he? Marlon's response, Jimmy was special. He had something most actors don't have. Absolute fearlessness, not in roles, in life. He didn't hide, didn't perform. He just was. I envied that. I still do. Were you close? Long pause, then. We were close for a moment. Then he was gone. His death must have affected you. Another pause. It did. More than I can explain. More than I want to. That's the closest Marlon ever came to discussing James publicly. until the deathbed confession. I loved him. So what's the truth? Were James Dean and Marlon Brando lovers, friends, mentor and student, all of the above? The evidence is circumstantial. No letters, no photos, no explicit confirmations. Just the intensity of their connection in 1954, the sudden distance in 1955, Marlon's refusal to attend the funeral, 49 years of silence, and 3 words on a deathbed. I loved him. In 1950s Hollywood, being queer meant destroying your career. It meant losing everything. So people hid, coded their language, lived in shadows. And when someone died, the truth died with them. James Dean's sexuality remains debated. Biographers argue. Some say he was gay and closeted. Some say bisexual. Some say straight with occasional curiosity. No consensus, just speculation based on rumors, hints, innuendo. But one thing is clear. James Dean loved Marlon Brando. Maybe romantically, maybe not. But deeply, absolutely. In a way that terrified Marlon. Because Marlon understood what James didn't. In 1950s Hollywood, love like that, visible, obvious, impossible to hide, was a death sentence. Career death, if not literal death. So Marlon pulled away, protected himself, protected his career. And James, who never learned how to protect himself, drove 85 miles per hour into a car on Route 466 and died at 24. Did Marlon's rejection contribute to James's recklessness? To his self-destructive behavior? We can't know, but the timing is suggestive. They were close. Then Marlon pushed him away. Then James spiraled. Then James died. And Marlon lived another 49 years, carrying the weight of those 3 words he never said to James when James was alive. I loved him. Whether that love was platonic or romantic, mentor or lover, it doesn't matter. What matters is, Marlon Brando loved James Dean, and he never got to tell him. And that regret haunted him until his last conscious day. July 1st, 2004. Marlon lies dying, his children around him, his nurse holding his hand. And in his final hours, he's thinking about a skinny kid from Indiana who knocked on his door in 1954, who looked at him with worship and love, who wanted to learn from him, who wanted to be close to him, who died before Marlon could figure out what he really felt, before Marlon could be honest, before Marlon could say, I loved you too, Jimmy. I was just too scared to admit it. I loved him. 3 words. 50 years too late. That's the tragedy. Not that they might have been lovers, but that they were something. Mentor, friend, soulmate, whatever label fits. And it ended too soon. Before it could be defined. Before it could be named. Before it could be resolved. James Dean died at 24, wondering if Marlon cared about him. Marlon Brando died at 80, knowing he'd never told James the truth. 2 men, 2 lives, 1 regret. I loved him. Did James know? In those last moments in the Porsche, did he think about Marlon? Did he remember their late-night conversations, their motorcycle rides? The moment he said, I love you, and Marlon said, don't? We'll never know. But I like to think that somewhere, maybe in whatever comes after death, James finally heard those 3 words. I loved him. And maybe finally, that was enough. There's a photograph, taken in 1954. Backstage at the actor's studio, James Dean and Marlon Brando, standing close. James looking up at Marlon, Marlon's hand on James's shoulder, both smiling. Easy, natural, like they belong together. That photo hangs in the actor's studio archives. Most people walk past it. Just two actors, a mentor and student, nothing unusual. But if you look closely, really look, you can see it. The way James leans toward Marlon, the way Marlon's hand lingers, the way they exist in their own world, separate from everyone else. In that moment, frozen in black and white, they're happy, together, before the fear, before the distance, before the death. That's how I want to remember them. Not as a mystery, not as speculation, but as two people who found each other in a world that didn't understand them, who loved each other in whatever way they could, and who never got enough time. Marlon Brando died July 2nd, 2004. He was cremated, his ashes scattered in Tahiti and Death Valley. No public funeral, no memorial service, private, like he lived. James Dean died September 30th, 1955, buried in Fairmount, Indiana. Hundreds attended. Thousands visited his grave over the years. A legend, even in death. They're buried 2,000 miles apart. They lived 49 years apart in death. But in 1954, for a few brief months, they were together. And that mattered. To James, to Marlon, to the art they created, to the people they became. I loved him. 3 words. A lifetime of meaning, the truth that Marlon Brando carried for 49 years, and finally, on his deathbed, released. Not for the world, not for history, but for himself. And maybe somewhere for James. The boy who knocked on his door in 1954, who looked at him with love, who died too soon, who never heard the words he needed to hear. Until maybe now. James Dean lived only 24 years, but those years were filled with stories the world never heard. Stories of love, pain, rebellion, dreams that died too soon. This channel exists to tell those stories, to remember not just the icon, but the man. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe, because James Dean's story isn't over. Not yet.